Testing, 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 testing. I am reading from the section called For the Quiet Time from my book Deep is the Hunger. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the poor in spirit. What does it mean to be poor in spirit? Does it mean having a sense of inferiority? Does it mean discounting one's true worth and value? Does it mean pretending to think lowly of oneself in the presence of others so as not to seem to be conceited or proud or arrogant? What does it mean to be poor in spirit? Perhaps it means to have a present sense of inadequacy in one's own spiritual life. The gulf between what we recognize as the high spiritual possibilities of life and what we are able to achieve at any particular moment is the measure of one's paucity of spirit. To be aware of this is to be blessed. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Theirs is the rule of God. The rule of God in one's life is the priceless possession. It does not mean that one is holy. It does not mean that one is perfect. It does not mean that one is sinless. It does mean that one has a sense of holiness, a sense of perfection, a sense of sinlessness. It is this sense that is the open channel through which the Spirit of God invades the life. To keep the channel open and clear is to be in possession of the rule of God. When I know that I have not experienced in all my parts the rule of God, and yet the rule of God in my life is the center around which my life moves, then I am poor in spirit. Our Father, for the truth which Jesus channeled to us concerning thy kingdom, we express our moving thanks. Be in us increasingly, that thy kingdom, thy rule, may guide our decisions, inspire our wills, and determine our actions. Amen. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the merciful. What is it to be merciful? Does it mean to be kind? Perhaps not. Kindness has a quality all its own. There is ever in kindness the quality of gratuity, of surplus, of extra. It may well be that no man ever quite deserves kindness. Kindness rests upon that which is without merit, the basically undeserving, the great overflow by which one life crowns another with glory. Of course, it does not mean justice or even righteousness. There is always the element of balance or establishing equilibrium, of squaring off in justice and righteousness. There is a certain core of fairness, of accuracy, hovering over the just treatment, the righteous act toward another. Blessed are the merciful. In dealing mercifully with another, I enrich my attitude with a diffusion of sensitiveness that mellows it, softens it. The merciful act is the muted act. There is no particular interest in fairness and measured dealing. It is like the difference between raw or pasteurized milk and milk that is homogenized. The richness is nowhere, but everywhere. Am I merciful or just decent? Are you? They shall obtain mercy. Curious paradox. Does it mean that if I am merciful, I shall be dealt with in a merciful manner by others? That I shall receive at the hands of others in kind the thing I have passed on to them? This may not follow at all, or it may. But that is beside the point. The merciful shall obtain mercy because they have mercy already. They are what they share with others. Often the net result is that my act of mercy does call forth action of the same quality from others. I become so involved in the richness of the quality of my dealing that I am immunized against the absence of mercy in the dealings of others with me. My life places upon others an imperative that broods over their own deeds, revealing their true quality to them, pervading their deeds with the richness of my own deeds. It is a great risk, but in the last analysis, it is unbeatable. Blessed are the merciful, for they have mercy already. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the humble, the low in heart, the generous in attitude toward others, the unafraid, the courageous. Meekness is often confused with false modesty, with a certain lack of courage, with self-degrading and ingratiating humility. To be meek is to have a clear understanding of one's strength and one's weakness. It is to have a normal self-estimate, not to overrate nor to underrate one's ability, one's powers, one's functioning. Meekness is sometimes used as a device for getting one's way, for taking advantage of others, for exploiting other people. It arises out of a sure knowledge that the attitude of pride and arrogance will be resisted, but that meekness will unarm the opposition and win the victory. Meekness used in this way is a form of radical deception and is not to be confused with humility. Am I guilty? Do I take low in order to gain my end? Search me, O God, search me. They shall inherit the earth. They shall possess the earth. It is true that humility can never be humiliated. It cannot be finally resisted or overcome, for it is an attitude of direct honesty in relationships, growing out of a knowledge that the sure responsibility is to God and not to the estimate of nor the impression of one's fellows. It is an attitude of openness toward life, ever learning, ever growing in a perfection which is God. There is no room in it for fear, for cringing, for cowardice. It breathes confidence because it is the soul's answer to the scrutiny of God. To such, life and the earth belong. Search me, O God. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are they that mourn. What does it mean to mourn? Does it mean to weep, to exhibit grief? This is the most obvious meaning. What is grief? Is it merely an emotional reaction to a situation which causes one to be sad and, in a sense, unhappy? Or is it an expression of sorrow growing out of a profound sympathy for or identification with someone in distress? What are the things that are capable of making you mourn? What things, however terrible they may be, are incapable of affecting you? You are blessed if you mourn over situations that are worthy of the outpouring of your spirit. This is a hard test. They shall be comforted. They shall be reassured. They shall be consoled. They shall be confirmed. They shall be validated. To be comforted does not necessarily mean that the occasion for mourning will be removed, but it does mean that in the presence of a situation in which there is a spontaneous outpouring of the self in healing and redemption to others whose need grips and holds, the spirit is somehow cleansed, washed, reassured. It is a paradox. The comfort is in the thing that happens to you in the process of the self-giving. That it will do much for the other person may be assumed. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Our Father, let me not spare myself in the outpouring of my spirit in sympathy and in total self-giving where the need of another makes demand. Teach me the fearlessness that comes from such encounters. The results I trust to Thee. Amen. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are the peacemakers. Am I a peacemaker? Do I make peace in my home? This is my desire. I have a will to peace, or do I? I must see that no man gives all nor takes all, but rather that by yielding and affirming wholeness of living in community becomes the way of life. Of course, I do not wish war in myself, in my private circle, in the wide world of men. Yet the seeds of war are in me. Deep is the conflict within. When I would do good, evil is present. Or I want to do what is right, but wrong is all that I can manage. One slight injury to my pride, to my feelings, and I let it ferment until it sends a temperature all through my spirit, a false sense of honor. Sometimes I like to nurse my wounds. Whole nations do this. Blessed are the peacemakers. This means that I must possess and create a will that is good toward myself, toward my fellows, toward life and living. This goodwill must constantly be fed by facts and a careful understanding of them. Facts concerning myself, concerning my fellows, concerning life. There must be an energized imagination. In my mind, I must play with all manner of creative possibilities in my relations with others, familiarizing myself with the flavor of people and their potentiality. This I must do until there is revealed in them the very essence of what I know of myself. Then I will understand their understanding, feel their feeling, sit where they sit. My judgment will be tenderized. My hardness will be softened. My justice will be merciful. I will be a peacemaker. Or I will be a peacemaker. Or I will be a peacemaker. They shall be called the children of God. The peacemaker is so like what men are seen to be at their best that they remind men of what God must be like. They recall to men's minds the thought of the best and the highest. They warm men with the thought of God. They breathe his promise to the spirit of men. They bring to mind the assurance that all stand in immediate candidacy to achieve in fact what they are in essence, children of God. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you falsely for my sake. Can this be possibly true? To be reviled? To be persecuted? To be reviled and persecuted is to be turned down by one's fellows. No one ever thinks that he quite deserves it. It causes a man to feel that he is no good, that he has no worthy place in the regard and respect of his fellows, because in some way he has betrayed them. The most natural thing is to feel that they have betrayed him. But if it has not been my intent to betray them, or even to attack them, then what? Suppose I've only done what I had no other choice but to do. There was nothing personal or vindictive either in my attitude or in my intention. I was only speaking out against injustice, for instance. I could not stand silent in the presence of cruelty, exploitation, violence. I had to speak out, to do what I could to arouse the conscience of my fellows. This I had to do. It was not in my mind to stir up trouble, because enough trouble was already stirred up. Why don't they face the evil they're doing? Why do they take it out on me, I ask, perhaps? I have no power. I have no organization. I represent no interests. I'm just a man who could not be silent. And now they turn their backs upon me. Now they pour their wrath upon me. Rejoice and be exceeding glad. Rejoice and be exceeding glad. What does this mean? Should I take delight in my suffering? Is that healthy? Is not that morbid? Is that not thinking of myself more highly than I ought to think? I mistrust the mood. Over and over I go in my mind. The question will not down. Can I trust my own feelings when I take delight in what men are doing to me? Perhaps I'm looking at this in a wrong manner. Rejoice and be exceeding glad because I'm being persecuted? No. Rejoice and be exceeding glad because I did not miss my one opportunity to recognize and count myself on the side of justice, truth, right. What a chance I almost missed. Oh, to know for once that I had sheer courage, that I declared myself on the side of decency. That is why I am glad. That is why I rejoice. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. I'm doing now 3 short meditations based upon 3 phrases from the Lord's Prayer. Thy kingdom come. Thy kingdom come in my life with myself. Often I forget to remember that always I must live with myself. What of me that is unpleasant, ugly, negative? What of me that is pleasant, beautiful, positive, is still of me. I cannot escape from myself. Often I try by a wide variety of means. These escape devices are many. Sometimes it is attempted through excessive work, sometimes through heightened excitement, sometimes through worry and anxiety, but always it is the same. I come back to myself at last. I must let the rule of God invade my relations with myself. What in me makes for disorder, for tempest, for destruction, I must release to the purging, the cleansing of the rule of God. Thy kingdom come in my life with others. Often I forget to remember that always I must live with others. I am not alone, as if I were the only person on an uninhabited island. There are those with whom I am in daily contact. Am I helpful or am I unhelpful in what I do in my relations with my fellows? Do I make life easier or do I make it harder for them? Am I an irritant, always managing to be the center of some kind of disturbance? Do I exploit others in my relationships with them? Do I use them as means to my private ends, sacrificing them to goals in which they do not share? I must let the rule of God invade my relations with my fellows. I must put at the disposal of the divine invasion the rugged or brittle fabric of my other than self relations. Holy Father, turn thy holy light upon my relations with myself and with others, that these things that defeat thy kingdom in me may be destroyed or rooted out. Thy light sears, O God, thy light sears. Amen. Thy will be done. Thy will be done in me. The will of God is often thought of as something that comes into a man from the outside. It is regarded as something against which the individual has to struggle as an antagonist. It may well be that the will of God does not come from without, as a grand invasion of the Spirit, but rather it is welling up from within the deeps of the mind and spirit, taking the shape of the life as water from a spring takes the shape of the banks between which the water flows. Thy will be done in me. The will of God is native to my spirit. It is the fundamental character of me. It is the foundation of my mental, physical, and spiritual structure. It is what I find when I'm most myself. It is what I find when I get down to the deepest things in me. It is what is revealed when all the superficial things are sloughed off and I am essentially laid bare. Thy will be done in me. When I come to myself, I am aware of the will of God as part and parcel of what it is that I seek above all else. To know this, to see this clearly, is to understand what sin is, what the evil of evil is, what rightness is. Close, present Father, flow through me in all the ways native to me and all my parts, that as a whole person I may do thy will with such completeness that perhaps I may become thy will. Amen. Deliver me from evil. Deliver me from evil in the thoughts that linger in my mind. Evil thoughts come into my mind, sometimes on invitation, sometimes dressed in garments of innocence. My temptation is to deny that they are there, or worse, to think I have gotten rid of them by pushing them down out of sight in some hidden corner of my mind. Once there, they settle down to reproduce their kind. Deliver me from evil by strengthening me in honesty, that I may give no quarter to the negative thoughts and their residue in my mind. Deliver me from evil in desires that are destructive to the vision of the good that illumines my pathway. It may be that my desires are not evil or good in themselves, Perhaps it is what they become when clothed in the deed that gives them their character. On the other hand, certain desires are geared to accomplish and call it by its true name. In so doing, I would hold it up before the scrutiny of God, that I may see it through His eyes. Deliver me from evil in the things that I refrain from doing. Sometimes I see very clearly what I ought to do, but I reject it deliberately and blatantly. Sometimes I refrain by default, not intending to really, but by negligence or a variety of other alibis. I do not do what I know I ought to do. Deliver me from evil by stirring my will to action in accordance with what is right, as thou dost give me to see the right. Holy Father, deliver me from evil in all the ways by which I shield myself from the wholeness of thy Spirit as it works its perfect work in me. Amen. There follows now a series of short meditations on the theme, there is in God strength sufficient for my needs, whatever they may be. 1. Either God is the creator of life, or He is not the creator of life. If He is the creator of life, then there is inherent in life all that is necessary to sustain life in accordance with the demands of any particular life span. This means that there must be laws of growth, recreation, and maintenance that operate as long as they are not blocked. I start then with that simple fact. 2. It is my moral responsibility to understand how life operates in me, so that I shall not consciously or unknowingly interfere with its free creative movement in me. I begin then with my own body. I assume that when life is operating freely in me, I shall be full of health and physical well-being. When this is not the case, the life-giving force that sustains me has been blocked. It may be blocked by faulty diet, for instance. It is a matter of spiritual responsibility for me to use my intelligence and the knowledge that the race has acquired about foods to keep the life force unhampered in my body. I must search to find the things that are most useful in this particular, and to understand the things that slow me down, making my days demand increasingly greater effort to do the same amount of work. To eat properly, then, is a part of my religious vocation, for by so doing I draw on the strength which God makes constantly available to me. There is in God strength sufficient for my needs at this point. I consider my mind with reference to my fears. I'm conscious of what fear does to the way my body-mind behaves. It slows down my digestion and speeds up the beating of my heart, where there is no corresponding demand made upon my productive energy output. The result is a curious kind of congestion, affecting my efficiency and filling me generally with fatigue. I shall track down the source of my fears, destroy their hiding place, so that the vital energies of God will not be blocked by them. I may need expert help in doing this, but I recognize that that help is also a part of the strength of God. I consider the tendency toward anxiety. Anxiety arises because I am unable to resolve some difficulty or to solve some personal problem. I must take a positive attitude toward the thing that is the source of my disturbance. I recognize that I'm never alone, that I'm never left completely at the mercy of the things which would undermine my peace of spirit. God is with me. He is present in the midst of my anxiety, as insight, as courage, as confidence. This I must never forget. God is with me in the midst of my anxiety. Anxiety blocks the free flowing of the creative life of God, so that I become undernourished in my spirit and often in my body. I consider the tendency toward worry. Worry is bad for my digestion. It creates the kind of toxic condition in my system that aids the development of those protests in my stomach called ulcers. Something happens in my organism that blocks the free-flowing, creative power of God in my body, making for health, strength, and vigor. Worry is against life. It is anti-vitality and anti-God. I must remember that God is more concerned about my well-being than I can possibly be. I shall discipline myself in trust, trust in life, trust in my mind and its understanding, trust in God. This does not mean that I shall ignore the things that worry me, but it does mean that I shall seek always to understand them. I shall not give them a place in my thoughts that will make me their slave. I know that my life, the life of the world, and life itself all belong to God. I consider my feeling of inadequacy. There are times when I give out completely. There are times when I raise the question, what is the use of continuing to put forth effort in trying to do well what I have been able to achieve only poorly? Sometimes I'm faced with demands from others which with all my heart I would like to meet, but I fail them. My failure has nothing to do with my intention, my desires, or even my understanding. It is due to a lack of power, of dynamics, perhaps. I discover at such times that I am depending too utterly on my own strength. I act as if my knowledge were complete and my own power sufficient. I forget to remember that God is my strength and the source of the power without which no thing is possible. Over and over I must know this. There is strength in God, sufficient for my needs, whatever they may be. I consider the meaning of failure. One thing that an awareness of the strength of God makes possible in me is the understanding that there is often a clear-cut distinction between failure on the one hand and being mistaken in the things I am undertaking to do on the other. Failure may be due to the operation of forces over which I have no control, and therefore the responsibility for failure may not be mine. When I am too deeply involved in a sense of failure, I am apt to think that always my failure is due to my being mistaken or wrong in the thing I'm undertaking. The strength of God enables me to turn even the spear of frustration into a shaft of light. I consider my desires. I recognize the place in my life of simple, elemental desires which, through the years, have aided in guaranteeing the continuation of my own life. They are not bad in themselves, this I know. They are part of the creative process of life at work in me, a human being. When my desires get out of hand and lead me into paths that do violence to my health, my integrity, my ethical values, or when they cause me to lead another to do violence to his health, his integrity, his ethical values, then that which is an aid to life becomes a corruption. The free flowing of the Spirit of the living God becomes blocked, and I am temporarily cut off from his Spirit. I must remember to keep my desires under the divine scrutiny, and this I can do if I let myself down into his strength. I consider my desires further. It has come upon me with some measure of shock that many of the things that I desire to do, I do. That I am no better than I am because deep within me I do not really desire to be better. It is deeply disturbing to realize that again and again my desires are fulfilled. I must get the strength to want to desire to be better. I must desire to be better. Here and now, I lay my situation before God and seek His strength that I may desire to be whole. This I do with confidence, because there is in God strength sufficient for my needs, whatever they may be. I consider my sins. There are times when I have gone against the right as I have understood it. This means that my wrongdoing in such instances has been deliberate and objective. There are times when I have obeyed a sudden impulse without thinking about it. At such times I have been completely reckless of consequences, without fear, and without an immediate sense of guilt. There are times when I have gone against the right without knowing it, until there appeared before me the fearful consequences of my actions, and I am stricken with shame or grief or humiliation. It is when these awarenesses are upon me that I reach out for the strength of God to course through me, to cleanse my mind, to purify my heart, and abide with me as I work out the conditions of my forgiveness. I consider my sins further. There are subtle ways by which I have blocked the clean feeling, fouled the upright thought, stifled the good impulse without doing the deliberate act of transgression. I have surrounded my thoughts with fog so that my vision become blurred. I have indulged in half measures because the clear, full measure required more patience or more effort than I cared at the moment to exercise, thus causing the right thing, even as I saw it, to be lost by default. Pride has entered into the quality of self-giving, thus devaluating my motives in service. Then some spoken word, some fleeting memory of a bygone grace, something throws a flood of blinding light into the remote corners of my life, making me aware of my need. I reach out for the strength of God, which is sufficient for my needs, whatever they may be. I consider my relations with people. There are some people who irritate me. Sometimes I can put my finger on the reasons, sometimes I cannot. There are times when I show my irritation by the sharp retort, the sudden frown, the sense of tension in my body. When I am irritated, I create around me a negative atmosphere in which it is very difficult for other people to be at ease. In addition, I have a sense of shame because of my behavior, then perhaps a feeling of guilt, and with the feeling of guilt, the creative, life-giving Spirit of God encounters grave difficulty in effecting a release in me. In my effort to overcome this, I must remember that there is in God strength sufficient for my needs, whatever they may be. I consider my relations with people further. I want to love people with understanding and sureness of touch. Often I fumble. My zeal runs ahead of my understanding. I do not take the time to inform my goodwill. I am become too anxious to be effective in my relations. Hence I hurt easily. And instead of having happy relations, satisfying relations with people, often I am confused. In my confusion, I am apt to say, they do not like me. I must quit my anxiety, be still within, until my sense of life makes it simple for me to work out informed relations with my fellows. Hence, there will be blunders I do not make. I will have an eagerness for facts, and I will cushion them with understanding. In my effort, I shall rely on the strength of God, which is sufficient for my needs, whatever they may be. I let go of my accumulations. My ego is like a fortress. I have built its walls stone by stone to hold out the invasion of the love of God. But I have stayed here long enough. There is light over the barriers. O my God, the darkness of my house forgive and overtake my soul. I relax the barriers. I abandon all that I think I am, all that I hope to be, all that I believe I possess. I let go of the past. I withdraw my grasping hand from the future, and in the great silence of this moment, I alertly rest my soul. As the seagull lays in the wind current, so I lay myself into the Spirit of God. My dearest human relationships, my most precious dreams, I surrender to His care. All that I have called my own, I give back. All my favorite things which I would withhold in my storehouse from His fearful tyranny, I let go. I give myself unto Thee, O my God. Amen. I accept the good in myself. There have been times when things of beauty have stirred me deeply. Sunlight pouring into a city alleyway, moonlight upon the water of a still lake. That in me which responds to beauty I recognize. This I love. For the beauty which unites us, I am thankful. There have been times when something in me has stopped my telling of an untruth or the exaggerating of the facts. That in myself and in my fellows which desires truth, I reverence and love. I love myself. I stop to reflect upon the finest acts ever performed by any of the persons I have known. That in them which caused these acts I reverence. I remember at once when something in me has caused such a creative and wholehearted act that I was amazed at my own goodness. This I love. For the total of all the good acts performed throughout history, I give thanks. O God, I need Thee. I need Thy sense of time. Always I have an underlying anxiety about things. Sometimes I am in a hurry to achieve my ends and am completely without patience. It is hard for me to realize that some growth is slow, that all processes are not swift. I cannot always discriminate between what takes time to develop and what can be rushed, because my sense of time is dulled. I measure things in terms of happenings. Oh, to understand the meaning of perspective, that I may do all things with a profound sense of leisure, of time. I need Thy sense of order. The confusion of the details of living is sometimes overwhelming. The little things keep getting in my way, providing ready-made excuses for failure to do and be what I know I ought to do and be. Much time is spent on things that are not very important, while significant things are put into an insignificant place in my scheme of order. I must unscramble my affairs so that my life will become order. Oh God, I need Thy sense of order. I need Thy sense of the future. Teach me to know that life is ever on the side of the future. Keep alive in me the forward look, the high hope, the onward surge. Let me not be frozen either by the past or the present. Grant me, O patient Father, Thy sense of the future, without which all life would sicken and die. Let go everything but God. I must let go. For so long I have held to the habit of holding on. Even my muscles are tense. Deeply fearful are they of relaxing, lest they fall away from their place. I cling clutchingly to my friends, lest I lose them. I live under the shadow of being supplanted by another. I cling to my money, not so much by a wise economy and a thoughtful spending, but by a sense of possession that makes me depend upon it for strength. I must let go. Deep at the core of me, I must have a sense of freedom, a sure awareness of detachment, of relaxation. I must let go of everything. I must let go of pride, for instance. But what am I saying? Is there not a sense of pride that supports and sustains all achievement, even the essential dignity of my own personality? It may be that I must let go my dependence upon triumphing over my fellows, which seems to give to me a sense of security in their midst. I cringe from my pain. I do not relish the struggle of life, but I do not want to let go because the hate and the tension of contest feed the springs of my pride. They make me deeply aware, but I must let go of everything. I must let go of everything but God. But God. May it not be that God is in all the things to which I cling? That may be the hidden reason for my clinging. It is all very puzzling indeed. When I say I must let go of everything but God, what is my meaning? What am I talking about? I must relax my hold on everything that dulls my sense of Him, that comes between me and the inner awareness of His presence, pervading my life and glorifying all the common ways with wonderful wonder. Teach me, O God, how to free myself of dearest possessions, so that in my trust I shall find restored to me all I need to walk in thy path and to fulfill thy will. Let me know thee for myself, that I may not be satisfied with aught that is less. Amen. I give thanks unto God with my whole heart. I give thanks unto God with my mind. I count one by one much that has come to me to make me glad. I remember the simple delights, the taste of food, the tasteless refreshment of cool water, the feeling of fatigue followed by restful sleep, the friendly greeting of many who pass me in the daily round, and whose smiles deepen my faith in ordinary kindness. I remember, yes, I remember, and in my mind I give thanks to God. I give thanks unto God with my feelings. There are dangers which are now past. I escaped. How, I do not know. Vast is my relief that my hunch was wise to hold my tongue, when to have spoken would have hurt far beyond my powers ever to amend or heal. The mood that settled was of despair, unrelieved and stark. And then a change came out of nowhere. All I know is the cloud was lifted, and once again I was free. With sheer feeling, I give thanks to God. I give thanks unto God with my life. The will to do more than the situation requires. The desire to be better than I am and to work at it. The urge to be thorough even in simple things. The delight in my friend's good fortune. The sympathetic outgoing of myself in times of another's need. The thoughtful telephone call. The urgent letter sustaining the hand of a public servant who serves the common conscience. All these and more are my thanks to God with my life. The peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall guard my heart and thoughts. The peace of God. There is a peace that comes when lowering clouds burst and the whole landscape is drenched in rain, refreshing and cool. There is the peace that comes when gnawing hunger finds intimate fulfillment in food, nourishing and life-giving. There is the peace that comes when hours of sleeplessness are finally swallowed up in sleep, deeply relaxing and calm. There is a peace that comes when what has lurked so long in the shadow of my mind stands out at last in the light. I face it, call it by its name for better or for worse. There is the peace that comes when sorrow is not relieved, when pain is not quieted, when tragedy remains tragedy, stark and literal, when failure continues through all the days to be failure. Is all this the peace of God? Or is it the intimation of the peace of God? The peace of God shall guard my heart and thoughts. There are feelings untamed and unmanageable in my heart. The bitterness of a great hatred not yet absorbed. The moving light of love unrequited and unfulfilled, casting its shafts down all the corridors of my days. The unnamed anxiety brought on by nothing in particular, some strange foreboding of coming disaster that does not yet appear. The overwhelming hunger for God that underscores all the ambitions, dreams, and restlessness of my churning spirit. Hold them, O peace of God, until thy perfect work is in them fulfilled. The peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall guard my heart and my thoughts. Into God's keeping do I yield my heart and thoughts, and yes, my life, with its strength and weakness, its failure and success, its shame and its purity. O peace of God, settle over me and within me, so that I cannot tell mine from thine, and thine from mine. Amen. The Lord is the strength of my life. The Lord is. Is God an idea in my mind, a rumor planted by old tales born of fear, when life was young and death lurked behind every waiting bush? Is God the desire in my heart, a longing that goes always unfulfilled? Is God the restlessness I feel after dreams have come to pass, and all my hopes have built themselves in facts? Is God the indescribable tenderness that creeps in the voice unawares, that steals into the fingers as they linger momentarily in the hand of a friend? Is God the endless churning of the turbulent sea, or the steady shining of the stars against the blackness of the sky? Is God the quenchless aching of the conscience over sins committed, and the vast cleansing in the soul, riding on the wave of forgiveness that sweeps all before it? The Lord is. He is more than tongue can tell, than mind can think, than heart can feel. The Lord is my strength when day is done, and in weariness I lay me down to sleep. When fear becomes a lump in my throat and an illness in my stomach, when the waters of temptation engulf me and I strangle beneath the wave, when I have thought myself empty and the solution to my problem hides, lurking in the shadows of my mind, when the disease of my body tightens its grip, and my doctor picks up the broken lances of his skill and knowledge and takes his leave, when the tidings are of brooding clouds of war and of marching feet and humming planes, moving in the awful rhythm of the dirge of death, when all of this happens, the Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom and of what shall I be afraid? Quietness and confidence. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. Long before I was born, God was at work, creating life, nature, and the world of men and things. the worlds or ideas in the mind of God that have been realizing themselves through the ages. God is not through with creation. God is not through with me. In quietness and confidence shall be my strength. Acquaint now thyself with him and be at peace. In many ways I'm getting acquainted with myself. Always I seek a deeper understanding of my true self, the very core of me. What I would be and am not yet reassures me. Through my innermost self, I find my way to God. I shall acquaint myself with him and be at peace. I will fly in the greatness of God as the marsh hen flies, filling all the space twixt the marsh and the skies. What I seek beyond is what I'm finding within. The beyond is within. The signature of God is all around me, in the rocks, in the trees, in the minds of men. I will fly in the greatness of God as the marsh hen flies. I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. I can never be overcome by evil until the evil that threatens moves from without, within. This does not mean that I shall not be hurt by evil, shall not be frustrated by evil, that I shall say that evil is not evil. I shall see the travel of my own life with evil and be unafraid. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they shall comfort me. And there follows now 2 or 3 meditations from Deep is the Hunger, from the section A Sense of Presence. It is a simple story, simply told. One day, a man walked into an antique shop and asked permission to look around. It was a rather exclusive shop frequented only by those who could afford to purchase articles made rare by their scarcity and age. The visitor seemed strangely out of place because he was poorly dressed, though clean. Indeed, it was clear from his appearance that he was a laborer whose face had been etched by sun and rain and whose hands were rough and worn. After more than a half hour, he left. In about 10 days, he returned. This time, he found a very beautiful piece of old glass and asked if he could make a deposit on it. Each week he made a payment until at last the article was his. With much curiosity, the owner of the shop engaged him in conversation to determine, if he could, the use to which such a man would put his new purchase. I bought it for my little room, he said, and continuing, it isn't much, but I bring to it from time to time through the years only the very best and most beautiful things. You see, that is where I live. End of quotation. To bring to the place where you live only the best and most beautiful. What a plan for one's life. This is well within the reach of everyone. Think of using one's memory in that way. As one lives from day to day, there are all sorts of experiences, good, bad, beautiful, ugly, that become a part of one's past. To develop the ability to screen one's memory so that only the excellent is retained for one's own room. All kinds of ideas pass through one's mind about oneself, about the world, about people. What do you keep for your own room? Think it over now. Which ideas do you keep for the place where you live? It is well within the mark to say that the oft-quoted words of Jesus about laying up for yourself treasures in heaven deal with this same basic idea. The place where you live is where your treasures are. Where your treasures are is where your heart is. And where your heart is where your God is. Francis de Sales, in his introduction to the devout life, says that bees, when they are surprised by the wind, lay hold of little stones so as to keep their balance and not be swept away in the storm. No one is able to predict when, and indeed how often, the strong winds will come to threaten the very core of one's balance and security. Indeed, there are some people whose lives seem to create vacuums that pull into them tempests, storms, tornadoes, which keep them constantly in a state of siege. For such, there does not ever seem to be the lull, the quiet period when nothing is happening. It may be that such persons regard the quiet time merely as that which is the immediate forerunner of the storm, and hence cannot be separated from the storm. Often, as a mere technique of equilibrium, an attitude or mood is developed that makes the individual hold his course despite the fact that his way ever moves along the storm path. There may be an element of fun and good fortune in the fact even. The rest of us, however, live very tame lives. We are not often caught up in blowings that would uproot and make havoc with our balance. But soon or late, we are visited by the storms. Sometimes they come unannounced. Bright sunshine one moment, and the next dark clouds and the winds. Sometimes they are a long time in the making. We may ignore the signs, for we may be too busy to be able to do anything to prepare for meeting them. At any rate, there comes a day when all fury breaks forth and we are without shelter, without protection. At such a time, we are reminded by Francis, the bee fastens himself onto a stone which is nearly always at hand and clings to this, thereby enabling him to keep his balance and not be swept away by the storm. Do you have anything to which you cling at such times that enables you to keep your balance and not be swept away by the storm? Think about it. Whenever the mind of man has been uplifted, whenever I have frustrated the temptation to deny the truth within me, or to betray a value which to me is significant, whenever I have found the despair of my own heart and life groundless, whenever my resolutions to be a better man have stiffened in a real resistance against some form of disintegration, whenever I have been able to bring my life under some high and holy purpose that gives to it a greater wholeness and a greater unity, whenever I have stood in the presence of innocence, purity, love, and beauty, and found my own mind chastened, and my whole self somehow challenged and cleansed, whenever for one swirling moment I have glimpsed the distinction between good and evil courses of conduct, caught sight of something better as I turn to embrace something worse, whenever these experiences or others like them have been mine, I have seen God and felt his presence winging near. Prayer grows out of an imperative urgency, sometimes pointed, sometimes diffused. It enables one to keep fresh and focused in spirit the dedication to which one's life is given. Again and again, prayer creates a profound sense of power deep within the mind, expressing itself in strange new courage and purposefulness. The first manifestations of this courage is the attack that it makes on the basis of one's external fears of people and of circumstance. Prayer often yields a buoyancy and joyousness of spirit as the overtone of a relaxed confidence in God. It helps to clarify the conflicting issues that naturally arise out of any form of action, so that against the darkness of the age, I can see the illumined finger of God guiding me in the way that I should go, so that high above the clash of arms, in the conflict for position, for rights, for status, for security, I can hear, speaking distinctly and clearly to my own spirit, the still small voice of God. Without this, nothing quite has meaning. With this, all the rest of the journey, however difficult, however painful, however devastating, will be filled with a music all its own. And even the stars in their courses and all the wooded world of nature will participate in the triumphant music of my heart. When our minds are sick with frustration and division, when fear eats away the foundations of our peace, be present, O our Father, to heal, to bless, and make whole. When our hearts are heavy with sorrow and misery, when only heaviness is our daily portion, be present, O our Father, to heal, to bless, and relieve. When our friends are difficult because of misunderstanding and loss, when the beauty of comradeship has wasted like the noonday, be present, O our Father, to restore, to bless, and renew. When the thread of our years unwinds near the end of the spool, when the failing powers of mind and body accent the passing days, be present, O our Father, to reassure, to make steady, and confirm. When our well-ordered plans fall apart in our hands, when hopes give up having run their course, be present, O our Father, to replenish, to create, and redeem. When faith in our fellows wallows in the mud, when through disappointment, through failure, through flattery, all seems lost, be present, O our Father, to revise, to renew, and reassure. I close these reading of sections of Deep is the Hunger with this prayer that appears on page 104. God, I need Thee when morning crowds the night away and tasks of waking seize my mind. I need Thy poise. God, I need Thee when love is hard to see amid the ugliness and slime. I need Thy eyes. God, I need Thee when clashes come with those who walk the way with me. I need Thy smile. God, I need Thee when the path to take before me lies. I see it. Courage flees. I need Thy faith. God, I need Thee when the day's work is done, tired, discouraged, wasted. I need Thy rest. Amen.